The sound of fabric tearing cut through the diner like a gunshot, and for a second nobody breathed. I remember standing there frozen, Destiny's shirt ripped open at the shoulder, and that tattoo, those airborne wings, and the name etched beneath staring everyone in the face. Harrison Wellington. The man who thought he owned this whole town staggered back like he'd just seen a ghost. 30 pairs of eyes went wide. No one said a word, but you could feel it. The balance of power had shifted. Now let me take you back a few days earlier, because stories like this don't start with a single tear in fabric, they build up piece by piece. 3 days before that diner showdown, Harrison was gliding down Main Street in his black Porsche Rolex flashing, as if to remind us all he wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. Buildings were crumbling bulldozers chewing through old shops, glass towers popping up like weeds, and right in the middle of it all sat Ruby's Diner. Red curtains, hand-painted sign, the kind of place you could smell biscuits baking from the sidewalk. Harrison wanted it gone. Ruby, stubborn as ever, wouldn't sell. His answer, escalate. That was the word he used. File complaints, flood her with inspections, make life unbearable. And Ruby, this sweet woman who'd spent nearly 4 decades feeding half the town, just kept wiping her counters, shoulders heavy, but spirit unbroken. Meanwhile, a few hours away, Destiny Johnson was sitting in her rundown apartment staring at bills she couldn't pay, landlord texting eviction threats, her savings down to a few $100. 28 years old, a combat vet with scars on her shoulder, and scars even deeper in her mind. The army had taught her how to fight, but it hadn't taught her how to sleep through the nightmares. And in that quiet moment, desperate, she scrolled through her contacts and saw one name, Ruby. Her grandmother's oldest friend, practically family. When Ruby answered, her voice shook. She tried to cover it, said she was just tired, that the diner needed repairs. But Destiny knew fear when she heard it. Soldiers recognized that tone. Ruby was in trouble. By midnight, Destiny had packed 2 duffels, tossed them into her beat-up Toyota, and drove through the night toward Millbrook. The diner she found wasn't the one she remembered. Windows boarded graffiti sprayed in dripping red letters, sell or burn. The awning hanging torn like a wounded bird. Ruby tried to wave it off, but Destiny wasn't fooled. She'd seen tactics like this in Kandahar, warlords wrecking villages, then offering protection. And now, right here in small-town America, she was staring at the same playbook. The next day, Harrison walked in like he owned the place, sat at the center table loud enough for everyone to hear, and mocked Ruby with talk of tax reassessments. Destiny, wearing an apron for the first time in years, carried his coffee with calm precision. Then came the moment he spilled it across the floor, looked her dead in the eye and ordered, "Clean it up." Destiny froze, military steel in her spine, and said one word, "No." You could feel the air shift like the room itself gasped. Harrison turned crimson, towering over her, whispering threats about owning the bank, the police, the whole town. Still, she stood her ground. But when Ruby begged her to give in just to protect everyone else, Destiny bent, picked up the mop, and cleaned while the millionaire smirked. He tossed a $1 bill on the table. That dollar wasn't just an insult, it was a declaration of war. That night, Destiny parked outside and watched as the police chief and 2 men with toolboxes slipped in through the diner's back door. She filmed them planting violations, tampering with gas lines, photographing fake problems. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Stop recording or be charged yourself." That was when she knew this wasn't corruption by chance. This was organized, calculated, the whole system working to break Ruby. Morning came with a bright red condemnation notice taped to the diner's door. Predated hours before the inspection even happened. Ruby, hands trembling, started packing boxes, ready to give up. Destiny sat her down and finally told the truth. She hadn't left town years ago for some family emergency. She'd joined the army. She'd seen this exact strategy overseas break people with fear, corruption, and financial chokeholds. And she'd also seen how to beat it. Bullies, she told Ruby, win because they think no one will fight smart. But every empire has weak points. She laid out the plan document. Everything exposed the shell companies, tracked the tax fraud feed. Harrison false confidence through his own surveillance and rally the community he thought he'd already broken. Ruby, exhausted but inspired, agreed. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. But Harrison wasn't done. He came back the next day swinging harder, not with fists, but with paperwork. Medical records, discharge reports, every scar from Destiny's service twisted into a weapon. He called her unstable, a danger, unfit to help anyone. Destiny's chest tightened, panic flooding back, the room spinning. Ruby looked at her with doubt for the first time, and that nearly broke her more than anything Harrison said. And then Ruby remembered her own history. The woman who'd first owned that diner had faced segregationists with less than half the strength Destiny carried. She hadn't won in dollars, but she'd won in dignity. Ruby stood tall, stared Harrison down, and refused. She even held up her phone she'd been recording too. His words, his threats, his illegal surveillance, all of it documented. Destiny, steadying herself, dialed the number she knew would terrify him most. The FBI's Civil Rights Office. Harrison paled. His local cops, his inspectors, his golf buddies. They couldn't save him from that. He tried to bluster, but his mask cracked. Ruby tore his contract in half and dropped it at his feet. The diner went silent, but not the way it had before. This time, silence felt like the breath before a storm, a whole community realizing they didn't have to bow their heads anymore. And that's where I leave you. A millionaire who thought intimidation would last forever. A veteran who carried both scars and strategies. And a woman who found her courage again when it mattered most. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, Harrison Wellington wasn't the only one setting the rules. So let me ask you, what's the real measure of power? Is it money, connections, fear, or the moment an ordinary person finally says, enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever seen someone in your town stand up to power even when it cost them? Do you think Destiny and Ruby were right to fight, or should they have taken the money and walked away? And if you believe in stories like this, stories about dignity, justice, and people who refuse to be bought, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that courage doesn't come from being unbreakable. It comes from standing back up when the world tries to break you. The sound of fabric tearing cut through the diner like a gunshot, and for a second nobody breathed. I remember standing there frozen. Destiny's shirt ripped open at the shoulder, and that tattoo, those airborne wings, and the name etched beneath, staring everyone in the face. Harrison Wellington. The man who thought he owned this whole town staggered back like he'd just seen a ghost. 30 pairs of eyes went wide. No one said a word, but you could feel it. The balance of power had shifted. Now let me take you back a few days earlier, because stories like this don't start with a single tear in fabric, they build up piece by piece. 3 days before that diner showdown, Harrison was gliding down Main Street in his black Porsche Rolex flashing, as if to remind us all he wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. Buildings were crumbling bulldozers chewing through old shops, glass towers popping up like weeds, and right in the middle of it all sat Ruby's Diner. Red curtains, hand-painted sign, the kind of place you could smell biscuits baking from the sidewalk. Harrison wanted it gone. Ruby, stubborn as ever, wouldn't sell. His answer, escalate. That was the word he used.